to a watch list. I've been struck down with that disease that shall not be named for the past while. Hasn't stopped me watching lots of movies, although concentration levels not great during that thing. But anyway, let's talk about some films that I'd like to recommend to you that I think there's interest in, and we'll dive straight in with a Eureka release. There was a recent 20% off sale on eBay across some of the sellers. I managed to plug a few gaps in my collection, and one of them is Punishment Park by Peter Watkins. Now, Punishment Park, and Peter Watkins is a filmmaker, is somebody that does these kind of mockumentaries, in that he presents films shot in documentary style, but actually on a topic that is socially relevant or otherwise. Sometimes to get himself into a bit of trouble because people actually are convinced that it is real. And Punishment Park is set in the near future where, you know, the government's taken over, the whole world's gone to hell, you're not allowed to protest against the government. I mean, that's such a ridiculous notion that nobody would ever think could ever happen. But yet, in this film it happens, you know, that they're trying to take away the right to protest. And these people get rounded up and are sentenced. And as part of their sentence, they are given a choice of whether to do out their sentence of the 15-25 years for anti-government stand, or to take their turn or chance going through what is known as Punishment Park, where they have to go from one end to the other, and if they reach the American flag before they're caught or otherwise, they will earn their freedom. And so for an awful lot of the young people, as it is, they're anti-establishment, this is the route that they take. And it chronicles two groups. One group that's just been set free and taken on this task, and then the next group that's coming in behind that is pleading their case, and really the next group to go through that process or getting through that choice. So it looks at, you know, the reasons that people are, that there's insurrection, and then it looks at the actual journey of the people trying to escape their freedom in this wilderness, in this Punishment Park, so to speak. And it's a really it's an interesting take, given that it's very, because of the nature of the piece that he's trying to make, the mockumentary, he's taken a lot of people that are very much amateur or novice actors, so you get the sense that this isn't polished or professional in any way, which I think is a really interesting way to shoot it and to go ahead. And, you know, it doesn't take a big leap to say that this film has sort of things to say and has things to talk about in regards of this totalitarian or, you know, authoritative government system that there is, and why that's maybe not something that the filmmaker agrees with. God, you can hear in my voice the huskiness of the past week or so. But that's what you have, and it's a really terrific release because there's a full audio commentary that goes into a lot of the themes that are in as well, and then you have introduction by Peter Watkins himself about talking about why he wanted to make it and kind of the fallout from making it as well. And back in the olden days of Eureka, this is spine number 29, if you can make that out. They used to do really, really hefty booklets. I mean, I would say in some ways the typeface is so small that I'm kind of glad they don't do these anymore, because in some of them, like I was watching Nosferatu, it was just impossible to read. It was that small, and I've very decent eyesight, although getting worse as it goes. But there's the writing that's in that is also equally interesting about, you know, the legacy both of Watkins himself and the other films that he's made that you may or may not have seen, like Cullen the War Game, etc. But a really interesting film. And if you haven't seen Punishment Park and you like that kind of, rather than seeing mockumentary, even documentary style filmmaking, because it's so close to the truth that it almost could be a documentary, and especially in modern times or otherwise, this is something that I think a lot of people could get something out of. So that is Punishment Park. Next up is a film that I'm not even sure is very good. It is one of those 101 Black Label films, that it is Skinner. It is spine number 10 from that 101 range. And the 101 Black Label range is kind of this hodgepodge of, you know, cult films, and they surround it with, you know, a lot of very good extras and writing, etc. that's in that. Skinner's a sort of, you know, not interesting slasher. You've got a character played by Ted, don't call me Sam, Raimi, who runs around butchering and skinning people and flaying people. And he moves into a house with Ricky Lake's character, and he takes a bit of shine there, and it's kind of this juxtapose about the life that he's sort of leading on the outside, and then his feelings for this woman. that are in there. It is gruesome in places. It is a bit trash in other ones. It is inappropriate in other places as well. But much like many of the Vinegar Syndrome films, and I think this is very much a Vinegar Syndrome style film, the interest in this release and in this film is in the sourcing of the film, how it was lost, how it was found, the steps that were put together because of it, and how it gained sort of cult notoriety in the film world, and how, you know, certain scenes are talked about very badly and other scenes are talked about, you know, as being good for the genre. You have some pretty decent performance. I think Ted Raimi's quite good at it. Tracy Lords is quite good. She's an ex-lover who is going to basically trying to shut him down or stop him, and whether she's success or not is up for grabs, so to speak. But yeah, a really terrific release, and I think very much encapsulates everything that's kind of good and bad about a Black Label. They sometimes don't get the greatest films, but I think it goes to show that if you take average films, or at least interesting films, and surround them in the story of the film, the making of the film, the legacy of the film, and really fill that out, you get something that I devoured, actually, the entire release from start to end. Once I watched the film and it was very so-so on, I started delving into the extras and into the booklet and writing, and I do like the nature of the writing in the booklet. But again, it pretty much tells a story of the lost, how this film was lost, how the writer wrote it, the film was made, and then it was never really found again. And it is talked about a couple of times in the extras that comes. Interesting stuff, and one that I actually will more likely to go back and watch the disc itself rather than the film, but of course those two things going hand in hand often lead together. But yeah, interesting. And I have to say, at the start I used to think that these 101 label cases are very thinnish cardboard, or like corrugated or recycled cardboard, and they wouldn't stand up, but they actually have. This one's been on my shelf for a number of years, and you can see I really thought the edges of the discs would be where it really started to fray, but they're holding up quite well. And I know I take pretty decent care of my stuff itself, but this came through the post and then sat on my shelf, got taken apart, sat beside. It's been bashed about a bit and it's holding up quite well. But that is Skinner. Next one I'm going to talk about is something that I watched on streaming, and as part of my kind of move to stop buying as much physical media, all that kind of stuff, I've been watching stuff on streaming, especially stuff on the Arrow player. So trying to watch releases there before committing to buy them, especially singular releases or otherwise. And I've watched things like The Mangler, the Stephen King thing, and I'll do a watch list actually on just streaming services the next time up. I think that's what one of my aims will be. Well, I did want to highlight this release by itself because I think it's kind of extraordinary, and it is the story that's contained within Dinner in America. And Dinner in America is a film for the downtrodden, I think is a nice way to put it. It's a film that is made for the forgotten generation, in much the same way as something like Napoleon Dynamite was. Now, Napoleon Dynamite is kind of one of those films that's out there in the zeitgeist, is captured a specific moment in time. I don't actually think it's that fantastic a film, other than nobody else was making films like that, or of people like that. A lot of the people that are in Napoleon Dynamite, I like some of the scenes that are in it, but I don't think it pulls it together as being a cohesive piece. Whereas Dinner in America is everything that it is not. It has a couple of likeable, not likeable characters. They're kind of outside of the system. They're even outside of the normal teen. They're outside of the normal people that you might know. You've got one person that's a bit of a bad boy, who it turns out is the lead singer of a punk band with a mask over his face, so nobody really knows who he is. And he runs into this girl who, unbeknownst at the time, happens to be their #1 fan. And she's somebody that society just doesn't really seem to have an awful lot of time for. She's a young girl that's a bit lost. You know, not the pretty girl, not the smart girl, just the run-of-the-mill girl that honestly trying to find her way, trying to find out who she is. The things that she knows about herself are that she likes music and she likes this band, and in fact the bands that she likes don't seem to fit kind of this mousy image of herself. And these two form an unlikely friendship at the start especially, and they go to meet the parents, so you're a very straight-laced family, etc. And the whole thing's just joyous from start to finish. I can't tell you how much I smile from ear to ear as each minute progressed throughout this film. I think it's utterly brilliant, and it's not very often that I come away from a film thinking, well, that's a 5-star film. I think this is a 5-star film. I think of its genre, it is as good as anything I've seen in a long time, and certainly in another 10 years people will be talking about, God, have you seen Dinner in America? I think it's terrific. It also has one of the best musical interludes that has been in any film ever. I think the songs that are in it, you will just, as soon as the film finishes, you'll go and want to watch those scenes again and again and again. And even how they're portrayed within the film itself are awesome. Now, I have said that for me this is a 5-star film, but I think it's a 5-star film if you go in with the idea that this is a film for the downtrodden, for the forgotten, for that generation. If you were a boy or a girl that didn't really fit in, or didn't really feel like you were part of the in crowd, or didn't feel like you had a place, like life was for other people, being around other people, you didn't really like other people, you were kind of the person that tried to slink along in the background, this is the film for you. And if you were that person, or you could identify with that person, I think you'll get an awful lot out of this film. That is Dinner in America, a hearty recommendation. Next one up is, well, I would say over the past kind of couple of months, I've fallen down a real rabbit hole of Antipodean cinema. I've talked about The Last Wave already, and it's just expanded and expanded and expanded. And again, from Umbrella Entertainment and their Sunburnt Screens line, I have Dingo here. And Dingo is a film about growing up as a fan of certain things in a place that doesn't embrace that. So we have Dingo, who is a man that lives in the outback in Australia, and through a chance meeting one day with Miles Davis, who really isn't playing Miles Davis, but he's playing a famous jazz musician, he goes in this lifelong odyssey of being like a super jazz fan, and he plays trumpet to a level that a lot of his peers and a lot of people around just don't understand. They don't understand the concept of what jazz is. They just think he's a bit self-involved and a bit full of himself, because this is his passion, and nobody around him recognises this. Maybe it's except from his wife, but even she's strained to the point that he is a point of ridicule within the community. And yet his dream is still to go and pursue this dream of playing professionally, and he wants to go to Paris to meet Miles Davis's character and talk about how much he influenced him, etc. And that's been his dream, and he's been saving most of his life to make this happen. But the whole while this happened, people make fun of him, people are making a joke of him, saying, he's living in cow cuckoo land. He plays in local bands, but he plays in part of a 4-piece rock band with the guitar, the keyboard, etc. He plays the trumpet in the middle of it in a virtuoso style, or in a jazz style, and it's a kind of a heartwarming story of like one man's passion in trying to pursue their dreams against the face of everything else, and whether it actually costs him everything that he has in his life. Is it worth pursuing this dream? Is it worth doing all these things with disregard for everything else that's gone in their life, if it's your dream? And I think it's really charming. Rolf de Heer is the director of it, and there's a really lovely extended interview as one of the extras in the release along with it. I think the film is definitely cliched in some parts. Rolf de Heer was busy talking about the fact that he wasn't a massive fan of jazz, so actually trying to find music that wouldn't lose people that weren't into jazz, but yes, still be the hook for the film was sort of difficult. I think in total the film comes out really interesting. I think these are really interesting films, and like I say, I think this Antipodean cinema is stuff that you don't really see an awful lot of other places. Certainly America has some of this kind of desolate, what would be the outback equivalent, but a lot of this uses the geography of the land very, very strongly in setting the scene and setting the tone for the character, and actually the way that they live and are brought up. And I think really, like I'll say it again, I think Dingo is a terrific release, and I think this entire line is terrific. I'm definitely on the train of making my way through these, picking up. They can be a bit expensive to get to hear, but long may continue. This is my rabbit hole for 2022 so far. That is Dingo. And finally, I'm going to talk about a Criterion release, and it's a recent Criterion release, although recent here, not necessarily across the while. This is spine number 196, so it is a fairly early in the Criterion collection release, but only, like I say, only released in January here, and it is Hiroshima Mon Amour by Alan Rene, which is a film set in Hiroshima. That was originally set out to be a documentary. Alan Rene was asked to make a documentary about the aftermath of, you know, the fallout from the Second World War and what happened in Hiroshima. And this was released in 1959, and it was through the act of trying to make this documentary, and you can actually see the genesis of that for the first 10-15 minutes, because it certainly presents as a documentary for that period of time, and you're kind of wondering where it's going to go before it breaks out into the story about two main characters, really. One is a French woman who is shooting a film in Hiroshima, and she has a bit of an affair with a Japanese man who is also having an affair at the time. They're both married, and they both come together, and it's about exploring their own relationship and their own feelings for each other in the context of this place and the history of this place, and also in the context of things that happened in their life. Now, it very much centres a lot more strongly on the female of the pair, and about her own reticence, about giving her heart over or giving herself over to this man, especially given everything that's happened. It's an incredibly stylish film. I think it's one of the most beautiful films that you'll see shot, and for a man who'd only really made short films and this being his proper real feature, I think it's really astonishing. I mean, the screenplay that was put together for him by Marguerite Duras, I think is lovely, but it's what you do with that screenplay, because it's a soft film. It's a film that's very much asks you to be introspective and actually listen to the stories, listen to the feelings of the people that are expressing them within the film. I think it's utterly gorgeous. I think it's an absolutely brilliant film, and a legacy of, you know, somebody that really enjoys French cinema anyway. It's very much at that early part of the Nouvelle Vague, of the way it's shot, and it's very much a cornerstone of those kind of people. Now, people don't really consider Rene to be the auteur, because it wasn't all his own idea. He took a screenplay and he took an idea from somebody else and then did something with it. But what comes across actually in the interviews and the booklet, etc., is that he's a really lovely, eccentric man. You know, there's a short interview with him at the time. There's one from later on in his life. There is some exploration as to the music, etc., that's in it that I think is really interesting within the film. And I think if you're an art house fan or somebody that likes introspective and thoughtful cinema, I think Hiroshima Mon Amour is one of those films that you really should seek out. It's something that I think you'll really enjoy, and not too long. Like, it's 90 minutes on the button, and something that an awful lot of people will get a lot out of. And that is my watch list for this week. It's been a few weeks since I've done one. I'm kind of mixing things up, as you've probably seen, but some interesting recommendations I think around here. I think some good, some bad, some brilliant, and I think the two pillars, I'd say, of this week's one, Dinner in America and Hiroshima Mon Amour, are about as different from each other as you could probably imagine, but I think both quite brilliant. If you've made it this far, please let me know what you've been watching. I like the inspiration of what everybody's been watching, so that I can kind of catch up myself and give my own opinion on it. But if not, let me know what you've thought about these films, if you've seen any of them, and I'll speak to you again soon. Take care, all the best, bye.